Good evening. I'm Carolyn Rye, Chair of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. on this 26th day of April 2022. Members of the public, as always, are able to observe this meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV Channel 47, and on Zoom. We welcome those present and remote and hope that parents, students, and staff alike enjoyed a well-deserved spring break. So with that, Madam Clerk, would you please announce those school board members in attendance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in school board chambers are Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Felton, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Hughes, Ms. Manning, Ms. Owens, Ms. Riggs, and Ms. Weems.
Thank you. And for the record, Mrs. Franklin is absent tonight due to a personal illness. So would all present please join me now for a moment of silence. And please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we are at the Student Employee and Public Award and Recognition portion of the meeting and turning it over to Vice Chair Mrs. Melnick.
Tonight, we as a board are pleased to announce and honor the school board recognition recipient for April 26th, 2022. Ms. Frank, why did I do that? Ms. Owens.
Yes, we are happy to honor Mariah Kennedy for her first place state win in the Human Resources Management Role Play event at the Virginia Leadership Conference for the Distributive Education Clubs of America, more commonly known as DECA. This DECA event, which falls under the Business Management and Administration Career Cluster, focuses on knowledge, project, quality, and risk management. To compete, each participant has only 10 minutes to prepare a presentation based on a provided simulated scenario. Judges score coaching, demonstrating, reinforcing, and documenting ways to approach the scenario. And success indicators include 21st century skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, communication, creativity, and innovation. Mariah worked hard and stayed focused through all of this, which ultimately won her the top prize. Currently, Mariah is a junior at Green Run Collegiate, also known as GRC, and is also at the Advanced Technology Center as a marketing and entrepreneurship student and a DECA member. Mariah is described as a well-rounded, highly engaged, and super conscientious student who positively impacts campus. She's also labeled as a ray of sunshine, kind, determined, and intelligent. In addition to her academic accolades, she's also a member of her school's tennis team. Although she isn't sure what her future will bring, she knows she wants to pursue higher education with her newfound enjoyment of studying business, management, marketing, and related support services such as human resources management and business administration. Congratulations, Mariah. We are so proud of your hard work, and we are excited to see what your future holds.
And Madam Chair, this concludes the recognition for this meeting. Thank you.
That was Miss Woodhouse recruiting Mariah as she walked off.
Okay. We are up to adoption of the agenda. I'll note here that there was updated information added to action item 15C regarding additional grant funding. This information was sent to school board members yesterday, and the agenda packet was updated accordingly for both the public and school board members. So with that, are there any further modifications to the agenda as presented? All right, hearing none, I call for a motion to approve. Mrs. Manning, a second. Mrs. Hughes, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. And now the monthly superintendent's report. I turn it over to Dr. Spence.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. So here are just a few items of interest for you and our families to know this evening. First, I'd like to congratulate Aaron Nye, Library Media Specialist from Kingston Elementary School, who was recently named the Regional Librarian of the Year for the York Region by the Virginia Association of School Librarians, also known as VAASL. She was chosen for this honor out of all submissions from the York region, which includes elementary, middle, and high school applicants from the public schools in Accomack, Chesapeake, Emporia, Franklin, Gloucester, Greensville, Hampton, Isle of Wight, Newport News, Norfolk, Northampton, Becossin, Portsmouth, Southampton, Suffolk, Surrey, Sussex, Williamsburg, James City, York, and of course here in Virginia Beach. So quite the list of folks to compete with. As a library media specialist, Ms. Nye provides our youngest scholars with the tools they need to become literacy leaders, lifelong learners, and future-ready digital citizens with a passion to grow their love of reading and become creators and curators of their world. Ms. Nye is now a contender for Statewide Librarian of the Year, and the winner will be announced at the annual VAASL conference in November. Congratulations to Ms. Nye and also to Kingston Elementary School on this wonderful achievement. Throughout April, we highlighted our paraprofessionals, classified instructional supports, including teacher assistants, job coaches, tutors, preschool and kindergarten assistants, and general assistants, as well as our administrative professionals, clerical support staff, and our assistant principals. As you all know, all of these positions are so critical to the growth and well-being of the children of Virginia Beach. These staff members are often leading, guiding, and teaching our students while also providing additional supports that include one-on-one learning or small group sessions. And in addition, our clerical support staff, administrative professionals, and assistant principals ensure the pathways between our students, families, and schools are strong and connected. All of these individuals work to fulfill many of the behind-the-scenes needs for our students and staff, including supporting instructors, facilitating meetings, helping and celebrating students, and of course, filling in as needed in many other roles throughout their schools. So if you haven't had an opportunity to thank these many individuals, it's not too late. When you see these outstanding staff members, just offer a verbal thanks, write a quick card, or share a quick post on social media thanking them for their hard work and dedication every day. Also this month, we observe the Month of the Military Child, which is an annual recognition sponsored by the Department of Defense Military, Community, and Family Policy, which gives us a chance to acknowledge military families and their children for the daily sacrifices and the challenges they overcome. This April marked the 35th anniversary of the Month of the Military Child. In Virginia Beach, we have approximately 13,000 military-connected students enrolled in our school division, with the majority having at least one parent serving on active duty or in the reserve of the armed forces. I hope everyone's been able to take some time this month to honor and celebrate the military children in our school division and their families. And I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our division's military children and military families for their many, many sacrifices. As a reminder to our current families and those new to our community, we are now enrolling children into our world-class school division, and that includes ongoing kindergarten registration. The office staff in every school can assist you with registering your child, and you can find additional information on vbschools.com, where we are excited to welcome our newest and our youngest learners. This Thursday, April 28th, please join us over Zoom from 6 to 7 p.m. for a virtual family connection session, Earth to VB, caring for our community and our planet. Join panelists from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, VB Parks and Recreation, and the Environmental Studies program for a very special Earth Day edition of our Family Connection. Learn about caring for environmental wellness efforts in our local parks, keeping our local waterways clean and healthy, and how your family can be a part of all of it. Please make sure to register in advance for this webinar by visiting vbschools.com. And finally, to close out this evening, I'm happy to report that VB Schools has been honored for the 13th consecutive year as one of the best communities for music education by the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation. That means VBCPS is in the top 5% of school districts across the nation to receive this prestigious award, which is given to those schools that demonstrate outstanding achievement in efforts to provide music access and education to all students. This award also acknowledges that Virginia Beach City Public Schools is leading the way with learning opportunities as outlined in the Every Student Succeed Act, which recommends music and the arts as crucial elements of a well-rounded education for all children. Our school division employs 133 music teachers providing instruction to students in grades K through 12, and we want to thank all of our staff members who paved the educational music path for our students every single day. Thank you, Madam Chair. This concludes our report.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. Much to celebrate. All right, approval of meeting minutes, item 10. This is the April 5th regular school board meeting, our meeting right before spring break. Any modification to these minutes, ladies? Okay, hearing none, motion to approve. Mrs. Holtz, and a second. Mrs. Hughes, all in favor, show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. So the school board will now hear comments on matters relevant to pre-K to 12 public education in Virginia Beach and the business of the board and school division from citizens and delegations who signed up with the school board clerk prior to noon today. Persons not called to the podium to address the school board are asked to be respectful of speakers, so the board and persons observing the meeting are able to hear and observe each speaker's comments. Persons signed up to speak will be called up 3 at a time. We ask that you line up when your name is called and begin speaking once you are called to speak. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes to present and will be given a 30-second warning before time expires. Speakers may refer to the online tracker to keep track of their time. Once your time has expired, we ask that you cease making remarks and leave the podium to allow the next speaker queued. Speakers are asked to be in chambers when called to speak. If not present, the board at its sole discretion may allow the speaker to speak at the end of the public comment session. Members of the audience will not be recognized to assist an online speaker with making online comments. As always, the school board invites the public to submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. Madam Clerk, would you please introduce our first speaker of the evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker will be David Donnelly, then Kelly Whitehouse, then Amber Thompson.
So I'll take my hat off. Everybody else is not wearing one, so we'll just.
Welcome, sir.
Yes, ma'am. When do I start? Am I started already? Goodness gracious. I am a lifelong resident of Virginia Beach, and I have nurtured 2 former school kids here. And let's get to the point here. Some of you are still obstinately clinging to keeping porno books in my schools. I am not in a group. I'm just a very concerned citizen, very amazed and distraught over your lack of scruples and good common sense. I'm speaking about any and all books that portray what genderqueer does. I, as a Christian, want my kids, heck, all kids, to be blessed by the standards of Jesus, not tantalized, preyed upon because of their naivety into the dangerous philosophies that this book promotes. And I don't want them in a school library, a public library, or anywhere else for that matter that tempts them into dangerous or risky behavior that otherwise they would not have been tempted into. Specifically, abnormal sexual practices that have been proven medically risky at the least and will destroy your health over time, even kill you, as has been abundantly proven by the United States' recent medical history. Now, what you say could I possibly be talking about? those of you who lived through the 60s like me know, the 70s, 80s, 90s, even you, some of you Generation Z people, you must know what I'm saying. If you have not lived under a rock, it's called good old Virginia Beach common sense. That's what makes, to me, some of you that still cling to this book so pitiful. You keep denying and are deliberately closing your eyes to the obvious, while at the same time censoring the Bible. Stop it. Now to the only real expert opinion that really matters. Romans 1:18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, and may I say women, who support the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them. For God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, both his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. For even though they knew
30
God, they did
seconds.
not glorify him as God, but give thanks. They became futile in their thoughts, and their futile heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the likeness of corruptible man. Therefore, God gave them over in the lust of their hearts to impurity. You did this to yourselves. Why are you doing this to our kids? For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature
And
rather
that
than
is
the
time.
Creator, who is blessed forever.
And that is
Amen.
time. Our next
Thank
speaker is Kelly Whitehouse, then Amber Thompson, then Laura Weber.
Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for receiving me. I'm here calling for the resignation of the Rosemont Elementary administrative staff. They have grossly and negligently handled a situation concerning my 3-year-old special needs, nonverbal autistic daughter. An incident happened on the school bus. Many of you are aware of. I will not be discussing the facts in that. I'm here to discuss what your administrators have done, the lies they have told. Carrie Hall, the principal of my daughter's school, this is a woman who thinks it's appropriate to have the poop emoji for her email profile in correspondence she sends to me. This is a woman who gets speeding tickets in the school zone. This is a woman who is entrusted with the care of these children, and clearly she is trying to cover up what has happened to my little girl.
Madam Attorney, can we refer to administrators generically without mentioning by name?
She's allowed to make comments. She can say the name she wants to.
In addition to Carrie Hall, Penny Fonville, the assistant principal, directly lied to me about the contents of the videotape. Members of this school board administration were not able to process a simple FOIA request. I had to attain legal counsel to get a paper to have the videotape released. Carrie Hall sent me a fruitless link that was password protected, knowing I could not view it. She has dodged my phone calls. She has referred me to risk management, which has nothing to do with this. They have referred me to student leadership. Dr. Sterling White has been in contact with me when I specifically asked for John Sutton. Again, my daughter went through a traumatic experience on the school bus. They are aware of it. They have seen this tape with me. I was told no one touched my little girl. That is blatantly false. So again, I'm calling for the resignation of the Rosemont Elementary administrative staff. Their tenures need to be forfeited. That is all I have to say about this matter. For me to stop legal proceedings, I need those resignations. The ball is in your court. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amber Thompson, then Laura Weber.
Good evening.
Good evening. First, I'd like to discuss my opposition to continuing to pay dues to the Virginia School Board Association and in turn cut ties. As we've seen over the last year especially, the majority of these school board associations don't seem to have the children's best interests at heart. Instead, they are politically charged. The VSBA has already voted to end its membership with the National School Board Association due to its pattern of dysfunction, as well as their attack on concerned parents and their well-known letters sent to our current administration. Per the VSBA, your board duties are to hire a superintendent and essentially rubber stamp his policies. I believe that is completely backwards, and I'm not sure what benefit, if any, being a part of this association truly has for our children. Next, I'd like to touch on a recent response to a citizen's concerned email from Dottie Holtz. This citizen had complaints about sexually graphic books being in our schools. Mrs. Holtz responded with, "Since you homeschool your children, you are free to choose their reading materials. I suggest that you concentrate your concerns on your family and allow other families to also have choices." With this logic, should you really be serving on this school board, Mrs. Holtz? You chastised her due to not having children in the physical public school system, but do you understand that she still must submit curriculum to you all for approval? That she must submit grades at the end of the year to you all? If homeschooling has any connection to this board, which it does, she has every right to voice her complaints. Instead of invalidating her concerns, maybe try seeking to understand why she has chosen to homeschool her children and what her concerns truly are with the school system. Maybe, just maybe, you could learn something from all of this. This isn't about taking away someone's choice. These parents are more than welcome to obtain said book outside of the school system, if they so choose. It is about its appropriateness in being available to children in a school library. Moreover, anyone can express concerns or come speak at these meetings, whether they have a child in the school system or not. Our schools are funded by their tax dollars as well. It's baffling because even your very mission statement begins with the line, "The Virginia Beach City Public Schools in partnership with the entire community." So I encourage everyone listening today, email your concerns, show up to speak. Your apprehensions are valid and deserve to be voiced. I don't care if you're a grandparent, a parent of a VBCPS student, a parent of a homeschooled student, or merely a citizen who has become aware of the course the school board has chartered. No one on this board has a right to tell you to sit back and take it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Laura Weber.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am here because my son's school it's been numerous issues. My child got in a fight. They refused to pull the camera footage from the school bus. They waited over 8 hours to notify me. My child was hit in the head multiple times and was never taken to the clinic. And again, I was notified 8 hours later from the principal. And my issue with that is, where did she get her medical degree? Because my child was punched in the side of his head, which is also the thinnest part of your skull. And if he has sustained a brain bleed or a concussion, that would be a lawsuit against the school for them not seeking medical attention for my child. Also, there was an incident on the bus where the assistant principal called me over 24 hours later and notified me that my child was being suspended from the bus for 2 days because he was standing on the bus and he put his hands on another student. Watching the video, yes, he was standing. Not all of it was while the bus was in motion, but some of it was, and he was horseplaying with other children. According to the disciplinary action, which my child never received, he put his hands on another student. He hit a child. I'm sorry, if my child were to hit a child, that is malicious intent. They were horseplaying, and there were multiple other students horseplaying at the time. They cited the code of conduct against me and said that he should know what he should and shouldn't be doing on the bus. That is true, but also your due process for your student code of conduct, your school board policy 5-36B, number 1, student shall be given written notice of the charges against him. He still to this day has not received any documentation. And number 2, if he or she denies the charges, he or she must be given an explanation of the facts known to the school personnel and an opportunity to present his or her version of what occurred. That was never given. My child, he spoke to the assistant principal the day after he was suspended, and I was told to pretty much suck it up because I've already complied with the bus suspension. And with the Virginia Compilation of School Discipline Laws and Regulations, it
30
states
seconds.
that in 22.1-276.2, the removal of a student from the class, where my child was removed from the class. Number 3, the procedure of written notification of the student and his parents of any incident reported, the contents, the opportunity to meet the teacher or school administrator, discuss the student's behavior and possible consequences. That did not occur because he was pulled from class, he was questioned, reprimanded, and disciplined, all without my knowledge. I mean, what else goes on?
And that is time. Madam Chair, that was our last in-person speaker, and our online speaker had to cancel, so we are done with public comment for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to the information portion of the evening, beginning with interim financial statements.
Good evening,
Hello.
Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, school board members, Dr. Spence. As of March, the overall revenue trend remains acceptable at this point in the fiscal year. The General Assembly is back in session again, trying to get the governor's budget approved, and we will update you as soon as that happens. Federal revenues are showing an acceptable trend at this time in the fiscal year. We have federal impact aid payments of $10 million year to date. Other sources of revenue are acceptable at this point in the fiscal year. The next graph shows that the sales tax receipts are at an acceptable level. Year to date through March, we are approximately $7.8 million higher than the same time last year. And the April sales tax is coming in about $900,000 over April of last year. And the last graph shows that the expenditures and encumbrances trend continues to remain acceptable at this point in the fiscal year. And this concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Questions or comments? All right, we thank you.
Thank you.
Information item B, general fee schedule for this upcoming fiscal year. Ms. Pate.
Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, school board members, and Dr. Spence. As we do each year before you is the general fee schedule containing the approved 2021-22 assessed fees and the proposed 2022-23 fees. There are some increases and decreases as well as several fees that will not see changes for the upcoming school year. I'm not going to go over each of them, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to review the schedule. There will be no increase in student meal prices for the next school year. After some thorough calculations and various considerations, the Office of Food Services decided not to raise school student meal prices regardless of the current inflationary times. However, it is being predicted that we will likely have to raise meal prices for the 2023-24 school year. I also want to point out on page 3 of the schedule, the fee for the new pharmacy tech course is now necessary as students need to register for externships with the Board of Pharmacy and also pay for a background check required by our partnering agencies. Also, the semesters of parenting and childcare occupations are combined into a new year-long course, Parenting and Early Learning Careers, with the revised associated fees listed on the schedule. On page 4, you see the fee line for dental assisting students is eliminated. These students are no longer required to purchase liability insurance as they are covered under the Division Certificate of Insurance. And the last item I will cover is the student tuition fees for non-resident students on page 4. To further support our recruitment efforts for all positions, it was decided to allow children of Virginia Beach City Public School employees who live outside of Virginia Beach to attend Virginia Beach schools tuition free. So you can see that the first 2 items for VBCPS employees shows the fees for elementary and secondary to be 0. The student tuition fees for all others were calculated as they have been in the past. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mrs. Weems.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say thanks for the recommendation about our employees' children to come here tuition free. I think that's a huge perk, and I think that's something that we definitely need to offer at this time. Thank you.
Here on that.
Mrs. Manning.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Weems, but can you give us an idea of the financial impact of that?
So when
How
we
many
actually, and I don't have a calculator in front of me, which I should, when we actually made that recommendation, we checked the student leadership, and there were about 31 staff members paying tuition. So that varies. And so 31 times those fees, I don't have a breakdown in the second, but I can get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Information item C, Virginia School Board Association renewal dues. So, Mrs. Hughes, you asked for this discussion, so we'll allow you to open it up.
So I did ask for this, and Ms. Linetti and I were in touch over this last week. And one of the things that I had asked for was everything that we pay to VBSA, or VSBA, sorry. I was given the amount, just the dues earlier, but there are also fees for legislative services, and they have classes, seminars that we take. So I'd like to get an idea of what we actually pay them.
Are you asking for any
Anything that we pay
seminars,
them.
conventions that people go to? I'd have to check with the various offices. We have to run a search for you on that.
I thought that you were already doing that because that was what I asked you in the email when you asked me what I wanted.
I got you what the fees were that you only paid. I did not go to check individual employees going to seminars. We can get that information for you.
Okay, can we just get an idea of what it is that we did find that we get?
What you had, and there was the overall fee to join, and remember with VSBA, it's calculated based on the amount of your revenue by a certain percentage, the size of your organization, and then those services. So that's where your fee is, that's built into there. If you pick other services like the policy services or some legal services, you can get that, depends on what you pick into that on there. As far as conventions go, it just depends on who goes to a convention at any particular time during the year of training. So we'd have to pull all those individual receipts to see who went to training the last couple of years.
So just for it to be on the record, what is it we pay in yearly dues? Do we get those legal services, legislative services?
I think it's on the cover sheet. Sorry, let's see if I go up there. No, sorry. Yeah, we don't have what VSBA told us is they haven't calculated the fees for this year. They didn't anticipate a raise, but your overall fee was $13,184.82. They have a legal assistance fee of $500, so your total is $13,684.82 is what you would be. That's what you paid last year for the services. She anticipated it would be somewhat similar this year.
So, yeah, I kind of divided them that way so each person could, it's two different items. Yeah, and I gave you one and then just passed them all that way. So I kind of thought I was going to have more information based on the email that you and I had. But here's the problem I have. VSBA is supposed to be our professional organization. And the taxpayers are picking up the tab for people to join what is supposed to be a professional organization. In addition, with the legal services and whatever webinars and whatever, where we travel to go to participate in different events, and then people are getting reimbursed for other things. We all saw, the meal tabs and things like that got picked up. But the problem is they're not actually a professional organization that advocates for school board members. They're a lobbyist group. That's what they are. They're a lobbyist group. And they really, I actually have a video I didn't queue it up to play. It's about 2 minutes. I can play the audio. But what the VSBA does is it pretty much trains school board members that the top 3 priorities are to hire the superintendent, pass the superintendent's budget, and pass the superintendent's policies. They train school board members to be subservient to the superintendent, who is supposed to be your employee. They train you that staff members and citizens are told to go through the chain of command when reaching out to board members, except that board members are directly accountable to the public. That's how it's supposed to be. We're elected by the public. We're accountable to the public. The superintendent's accountable to us, and all the other employees are accountable to him. But that's not how it's being treated. We saw a couple examples here tonight. They're trying to reach out to board members because apparently going through the chain of command isn't working. And we see the same with staff sometimes that reaches out. They provide scripted answers to give the community on CRT and equity, and they hire lobbyists. They are lobbyists. And we have examples of how they don't advocate for board members. Here we have, this was back in 2019. This was gifted to me from somebody else's FOIA request. where Mrs. Manning reached out to Gina Patterson, the director of the VSBA, to ask some questions. And instead of just responding to her because she is a member of this professional organization, they instead made sure they copied her employee, Dr. Spence, and then of course their lead lobbyist, Stacy Haney, who is also the school board attorney for James City County and Newport News, to discuss this. If I am a member of a professional organization and I'm reaching out to my professional organization as to why they're advocating for something, they should be able to respond to me. And then we also have, apparently there was a big issue in January of 2019 over the chair election. And so here we have, again, the superintendent and the executive director of VSBA who want to discuss it. Now, the whole board is not copied on this, even though this is, in theory, the school board's professional organization. What we have here is a lobbyist group with 131 divisions who are giving them money, which means they get between $1.5 and $2 million per year to push through their agenda, and the taxpayers are picking up the tab for it. And we pay almost as much per year as it would cost to educate a student. That's really problematic for me. And when we are discussing paying money out of taxpayer funds to a lobbyist group without voting on it, that's another problem. And one issue I became aware of relatively recently was we're hearing a lot from the public. I forgot to pull this up ahead of time, I apologize, about these books, about the books in schools with highly sexual content. And the public is not happy about them. Yet when we had a local senator put forth a bill, I can't find it, local senator put forth a bill that would have alerted parents and made these not in the schools. The three organizations that went to lobby to keep the books in the school were the VSBA, the VEA, and the Superintendent's Association. In no way is lobbying for those advocating for board members or superintendents or teachers, frankly. And if you have a professional organization that is supposed to be your organization, they should be advocating for you, not putting forth, they're lobbyists. That's all they are, is they're lobbyists. And I don't think the public should be paying lobbyists. And this is something that needs to be voted on. We need all of those dollar amounts, what they charge for all these seminars and webinars and everything else that the public picks up the tab for. And it should come to a vote. The public should know which board members feel that their money should be spent this way. I'm in favor of cutting ties with them.
Okay, Mrs. Felton.
Thank you, Chair Ryan, and I respectfully hear what Mrs. Hughes is saying, but I'd just like to say this to the public and those that are in my hearing voice. And I want to say personally that I was honored when this entire board voted me in to be the chair of the Tidewater Regional District to serve as a VSBA. And I felt that my attribute as being transparent, engaging, and accessible was some of my attributes that allowed this entire board to vote me in to be the chair of the Tidewater VSBA Regional. But I just like to say these couple of things as well. The relationship between any school board and its professional organization is an important and valuable place to be. It is through the VSBA that we have the valuable professional development activities that members of this board have taken advantage of. One of the most important is the legislative support they give to the members. School boards work through their legislative committee to propose legislation. They work with the VSBA to get that legislation in the hands of the members of the House and Senate, and then they advocate for that legislation. In Virginia Beach, we have proposed several pieces of legislation that the VSBA made it a part of the legislation agenda and lobbied for that legislation statewide. Some examples include making dual enrollment affordable for eligible students and allowing local school boards to collaborate with community colleges and establishing tuitions for these students. Propose amendments to current VSBA position as it relates to special education processes and procedures. New position for increased student access to internship and apprenticeships. In summary, the Virginia School Board Association has been supporting local school boards in Virginia for over 115 years, and we have benefited from that association. In my many years as a board member and a member of the VSBA, this organization has delivered and performed with vigilant, sustainable, to maintain certain rates or level, supporting our teachers and our educational. It has been boundless in unlimited devotion and passion to the duties of school board members, and has advocated and defend a cause or proposal for a public education that gives systemic and sustainable education for all students. I am proud to be a member of the VSBA. There is no other organization that has not come along and has given us both professional development and access to other board members. When we are in the legislative assembly delegation, it is consisted of over 200 individuals. And out of the 200, each division has 2 members in that legislative assembly. This VSBA is run, functioned by school boards. Out of 134, it is functioned by school board members. The only lobbyist that they are saying that we have is a person that goes to the Hill and present the bills that the school boards have put together and lobby for it. I stand firm that this VSBA organization is nothing but an instrument that has dedicated itself to promote school boards. Thank you.
Who's next? Mrs. Anderson.
So, I just want to say that VSBA does lobby on behalf of the school boards in Virginia. After each school board submits legislation to VSBA, and then everybody gets a chance to vote on the legislation that they want. So they do lobby on our behalf to help get legislation passed on behalf of school boards and on behalf of children, on behalf of what's good for children. I mean, they lobby to get funds so that we can carry on the business of the school board and be able to fund our schools. So they do that. So yeah, I would say that yes, they do lobby for us, but that's not all they do. They also provide training for school board members, and if I'm not mistaken, Miss Lonetti, isn't there legislation directing that school board members have professional training?
Yes, the standards of accreditation require that you have certain
Right.
professional training in certain categories. Yeah.
And so that part of that is what they do as well. And then speaking about the phone call that was made supposedly in January of 2019, I want to address that. The phone call that originally was supposed to be about, and it says on here that I was elected chair, and then the next day I had a phone call with Gina Patterson because we were trying to set up training for our school board retreat, and so we were going to be discussing that. And then it also says that there was some problems with the code of ethics. And so let me just explain that. That discussion was about the fact that Mrs. Manning and Mrs. Hughes had refused to sign the code of ethics the night before. And since that had never happened before, since I'd been on the school board, I'd never heard of that happening. I spoke to Mrs. Patterson about it and said, to her knowledge, had that happened to any other school board in Virginia, and how was that handled? And her response was that, to her knowledge, it had never happened to any other school board. School board members are usually pretty vigilant about signing the code of ethics. So we had a discussion about it, and so she really couldn't give me any advice on what to do about that. It was just one of those things that we just had to live with, the fact that we had a code of ethics was on our back wall without two school board members' signatures on it. So that's what that was about. So just to clarify what that phone call was about, I just wanted to make it clear to this evening. Thank you.
Mrs. Manning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I share Ms. Hughes' concerns about the VSBA, and Ms. Felton, I appreciate your service on the organization. I know that you're fairly new to it, so I know that the issues that I'm discussing perhaps may go back prior to when you were on the board. So in my experience in the 5.5 years that I've been a school board member, I've watched the VSBA, I've read their emails, I've watched videos, I've watched their trainings, and I find them very politically charged. I recently, this last session, watched a video of a VSBA staff member demean Republican legislators. It is extremely politically charged in one direction. And that's my biggest concern about it. It has become extremely political. And that, honestly, is why I don't want to be involved with them. Because I don't think that they represent every board member. They represent board members on one side of the aisle. And I'll share that video with the board when I get a chance. Regarding Ms. Anderson digging up the past code of ethics, one of the reasons why we had concerns with that code of ethics is because our version was not accepted. We had a version of the code of ethics because there was an item added saying that we could not continue to advocate for things for which we still disagreed with. For example, I disagreed with removing valedictorian and salutatorian, and adding that line to the code of ethics would have indicated that I should not be speaking publicly against the removal of valedictorian and salutatorian again. And that was my reason for not wanting to be a part of that document. So just, wanted to clarify that since that was brought up here. But, I'm sure I know where the board's going to go on this. I think no matter how you feel about the VSBA, I do think that it's important for us to have a vote on whether or not we're going to be a part of this organization. So that we do annually express our desires to be a part of it or to not be a part of it. So thank you, Ms. Hughes, for bringing this forward.
Mrs. Melnick? Okay. So I'll share, and I understand with any organization and the number of sessions held, that there could be issues with certain sessions. I get that. I happen to have kept the most recent VSBA agenda from the most recent session was the November annual conference in Williamsburg. It was our first in-person in 3 years, although I recall there was a remote option as well. And just to give a sampling of, this is a typical sampling of, in any given year, but this is more, it's up to date, so a number of these address present topics. But, the variety here, establishing meaningful business partnerships, collaborative leadership program for school boards and city councils, Virginia budget process, 2021 annual school law update, equitable family engagement, reconnecting with families, Virginia Assembly Legislative Outlook, Budget and Finance, What You Need to Know, FOIA Training, Virtual Virginia Program Update, Local Solutions to Solve the Homework Gap, Addressing the Critical Teaching Shortage through a Local Alternative Licensure Model, Superintendent Search Panel, Virginia STEM Inspiration through Integration, From data to insights, the critical role of understanding who, what, when, and where for strategic decision-making. Our headaches, your solutions, learning from crisis communications. The impact of student mental health, nutrition, and wellness. Bringing STEM and sustainability to K-12 classrooms. A new way to think about healthcare plans for Virginia Public Schools. Reconnecting with families, equitable family engagement. And I mean, that's a sampling of one snapshot in time. And for those of us who've been on the board, you know, whether it's been a year, 2 years, or 6 years, there's been this level of variety and even more. And I think we've touched on each of these operational officers who sit before us. At least one of these sessions touched on their department. And part of our continuous challenge as school board members, right, is to, we don't specialize, but we have to have some level of knowledge in order to engage with the superintendent's cabinet so we can ask the educated questions, so we can ask challenging and come and share information. And so personally, I was trying to think of some of my own personal experiences, like tonight, the public-private partnerships that are up for discussion. That first came to light with me with a previous VSBA session. I remember coming back with that information, and not that I per se introduced the concept, but it was a relatively new concept at the time. And so it was an example of a school board member hearing about it at a session coming and just encouraging the staff to keep it under consideration. And we worked together to ultimately what it led to a policy created in 2017. Sessions on sustainability, whether it's solar roofs or other environmental things that we've been so forward about. A lot of that came out of sessions at these conventions or conferences. And so I also want to say that we've had colleagues here on this dais who've been conference presenters for some of these sessions, and very proud of that, as well as staff who've been presenters and the superintendent himself. There is an attorney, a legal arm to this, an attorney arm, and so I know that there are separate law conferences for our attorney to attend, and there have been a number of issues that have developed in recent years where it's been useful to turn to our attorney and to say, well, can you reach out to your fellow attorneys throughout the state, your VSBA attorneys, so that we can, you know, get some thoughts and ideas from them and find out what they do. So I'll end it here. Who is next in the queue? Mrs. Hughes and then Mrs. Anderson. Mrs. Weems, okay, your first round, so please go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is a Miss Felton question or a Cammie question, because I'm very familiar with how the legislative, you know, whole deal works, because I was the chair for about a decade. And I've been up there in Richmond with the VSBA Legislative Committee and added stuff to it, you know, after we had gone through the state one. But how does it work when, like, say VSBA is going to Richmond, is going to lobby on something that's actually not in the VSBA legislative agenda? Like the example that was brought up. I'm not sure how that works. Do they contact school districts and see if you agree with them? Or how does that piece of it work? Because I don't know that. And if you don't know the answer, can somebody get back with me?
I don't know the answer to it. I do know sometimes that people of interest in a bill will reach out to organizations who have some background in it and ask them to come, but I've not been involved in that process.
Well, Ms. Felton, if you could find that out for me.
Could you explain it again?
Yeah, like, you know, like if we have the VSBA legislative agenda, and school boards can add to it, and we vote on it. You know, like several times, I think we added one a couple years ago. I know I was instrumental in getting some things added that the board wanted. But how, so I know how that works. You know, we all, you know, they go to Richmond and they advocate for everything that's on that agenda. But how does it work when they go and advocate for something that, like that was mentioned earlier, like the books? Yeah. How does that work? Because I don't remember getting an email from them saying, we're going to go advocate, we're going to speak. So can you find out the process of how that works?
I will find out the process, but I do not know of any agenda that went forth that the VSBA was pushing or even lobbied for those books. But I will find out the process to see if that went forth in that protocol.
Yeah, because I'm sure that, like Cammie said, I'm sure they're called on a lot of different things that aren't in that little booklet listed on the, how many agenda items are there usually legislatively on statewide? I mean, there's a whole book.
It depends. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So my question, so my question is, if they advocate for something not on the legislative agenda that all school boards have voted for, what is the process?
I know Mrs. Haney, I'll call her for you.
Okay, we have Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Hughes again.
So, to my knowledge, the VSBA does not lobby for something that's not a part of the VSBA agenda. It's part of their legislative packet.
Right.
They don't lobby for things that are not part of the packet that has already been voted on by all the localities. They don't do that. But I just want to clarify something. Anybody who thinks that the legislators in Virginia, the General Assembly, if you think that the General Assembly is not political, you don't know what the General Assembly does. It's just that simple. The General Assembly is political. It's made up of Democrats and Republicans, and I don't know how you can get any more political than that. Everything about the legislation that is passed is political. And so if you have a group who is lobbying on behalf of schools, they're going to have to be political because of the simple fact that they're lobbying politicians to vote for something. For example, the legislature decides how much money we get to fund standards of learning. Sometimes we get what we think is enough, and then many times we think it's not enough. And so, yes, VSBA will lobby to try to get more funds, and it's not always enough, but sometimes they lobby for legislators to get more funds for the schools. I don't know how you can get any more political than that, but yes, that's political. They lobby on behalf of teachers because the legislature decides, for example, teacher licenses, how long teachers keep their licenses, when they have to be certified. They lobby for, the legislature does that. They vote on when we start school, if we can start before Labor Day or after Day. Everything that has to do with what the legislature does, VSBA usually has a position on it. If the localities have voted together, and we usually vote in November. We have our legislative packets together, and it's presented at the state convention, usually every November, and all the localities are there, and they have a representative, and they vote on that. And so if it doesn't pass, then the VSBA doesn't lobby for that. They lobby for things that have been voted on by all the localities together. So yes, I would say that it's very political, because if you're going to lobby the legislature, you're going to be political because you are working with politicians. And so what they do is they work on behalf of us, our school system, and all the school systems in Virginia to try to get adequate funds to fund our children. I am certainly not, I would certainly not think that Virginia Beach wants to do that on our own. We need the VSBA to help us. We have lobbyists on our own as well, but the VSBA has lobbyists also. We need all the help we can get because, as all of you know who are sitting here tonight, realize if we could get more money from the state, we wouldn't have to tax our locality half as much. Our locality uses about 50%, almost 50% of the Virginia Beach budget just to fund our schools. And so if we could get more money from the state, especially for things that are mandated by the legislature, they mandate things and then they don't fund them. So unfunded mandates are a huge, huge part of our budget that the city has to make up for. I feel like I'm talking to, I'm talking to the preacher here because most of you sitting in the audience tonight are educators who realize that the legislature is really what controls how much money we get for our schools, pretty much. They give us about 40%, and the city gives us the other part. So anyway, I just want to say that, you know, VSBA does a lot to help us. And yes, I certainly don't want to pull away from them. I think that we really need them. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Hughes.
So the VSBA is pretty much nothing but a lobbyist group. And if we're already paying lobbyists, I don't know why we need to pay lobbyists twice, or one of them not able to do the job. That doesn't make any sense. As far as this code of ethics Ms. Anderson was talking about, I believe it's actually a code of conduct, and it wasn't a refusal to sign something. There were some changes that were put forth that actually 9 board members refused to listen to. So it should have been our own, and we're not beholden to the VSBA. If we're paying them dues, they're beholden to us. It's the other way around. So I don't think we owed them an explanation. Everybody up here, well, all of the board members up here are elected officials, and to pay somebody else to bridge the gap between you and other elected officials is really not necessary. I think it's incumbent on all of us to develop relationships with people in the legislature and on city council so that we can talk about things and try to get things through. I certainly reach out to my legislatures, and I know that all the rest of you are able to do that also, and I know that some of you do. As far as trainings on the budget, when I was first elected, I sat down with Farrell Hunsaker. He had commented that when you first take office, you're right in the middle of budget session. It is a lot to learn to get up to speed. And so he sat down with me and answered a lot of questions. I read through the booklet, highlighted, had questions, answered all of them. Didn't cost the taxpayers a dime. And so, you know, we should all be using our resources because everybody on staff and on the board have expertise in different areas, and we should all be using each other as resources. As far as board members around the state, I've actually started a spreadsheet as to what different divisions pay the VSBA, and you can call board members all over the state. They're happy to talk to you. I have quite a bit of that filled out, but I don't need an organization to do that for me. I pick up the phone, I meet people, I talk to them, and they're happy to talk. As far as the VSBA pushing our agenda, when the Senate Education Committee met in this past session, the VSBA spoke in favor of keeping these books with pornographic content. I do not recall that being discussed amongst us, that we were asking them to do that. I don't know, Ms. Felton represents us. I don't know if that's a conversation she had, but it was not relayed to us that I recall. I've checked my emails. I didn't see anything. Also, the VEA did, but they don't represent me. They represent teachers. That's up to them to have a problem with if they do. And then the Virginia Association of School Superintendents, which also doesn't represent me. That would be up to Dr. Spence if he has a problem with them going and doing that. But I do have a say in the VSBA. If dues are being paid out of taxpayer dollars to represent, in part, me, I should know everything they're advocating for. I would never have asked the taxpayers to pay someone to keep material in the schools that most of the public seems to have a problem with. And I don't recall hearing that ahead of time, and that's completely unacceptable. And that was kind of the final straw for me. It's just unacceptable.
All right, we will be sure this is added to the next meeting's agenda. For a vote.
And we'll have all of those numbers first before we vote.
If there's information you would like emailed to you, we will confirm that that can be provided.
I'll have to see if I'll work with Mrs. Pate in her office, see if we can locate that information.
Thank you.
All right, the next agenda item is our policy review recommendations.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, School Board members, and Dr. Spence. I'm Cami Linetti, and on behalf of the Policy Review Committee, I'm going to be presenting to you the policy recommendations from this month. This comes from the April 7th, 2022 meeting of the PRC. The first one up is 384. We did look at this last month. It came back to questions on there. The changes you will see in this particular policy come in section C. These are changes that were made in the General Assembly, having to do with what they call lunch shaming. Those are in the word in here is actually from the General Assembly. You'll see that wording in there. A question came up about the unpaid meal charges last time. There are two statutes that apply. One statute is 22.179:1, which talks about school meals. That particular statute says that school boards cannot use non-governmental third-party agencies to do debt collection processes against parents or guardians who do not pay their bills for their children's meals. There's another policy that was also passed through, and again, I can't explain why they did two laws without looking to see if they coordinated. But Code of Virginia 22.179.7 also says that a school board is prohibited from filing a lawsuit to obtain unpaid legal bills. So between the two, unpaid meal bills. So what that means is that the school division cannot file a lawsuit, which means you go into court on a debt collection. You can send notices, ask for collection, but our normal process would be to go into court. If we can't get it resolved, use it as the treasurer's office. And at that point, if they cannot get it resolved at a certain amount of time, we go into court, we get a judgment against them, and there's a payment plan. We're no longer allowed to do that by the General Assembly. So we can take our own action, saying notices to the parents, the legal guardians, but we can't take any further action if they don't choose to pay for it. Question was that can't be accurate. It is accurate. That is what the General Assembly put through. So we just need to be diligent on the front end about trying to make sure parents are aware of any unpaid bills that have to be in. But that is language out of the General Assembly, and those changes came in this year.
So I heard you say, Mrs. Linetti, non-governmental entity, and maybe this is Dr. Spence, but we can use the city treasurer still?
We've always used the city treasurer's office.
Just to clarify?
And at a certain point, the city treasurer's office sometimes takes, and they do a lot of debt collection issues for the city, unpaid taxes, unpaid fees. Sometimes they go out to third parties. Sometimes they use the city attorney's office to collect on it. It just depends on the nature of the fees and how busy we are at that time period. They could, if you looked at the one statute, the 79.7:1 said you could continue to do that, but there was another statute put out, 22.179.7 says you cannot file a lawsuit. Filing a debt collection suit in court is a lawsuit, so that's a piece we can't go through. So without getting a judgment against somebody in court, we would not be able to do that. So we just need to take efforts on the front end to collect these or work with these families to get them signed up for the free and reduced lunches if they cannot pay these bills. So those are the changes, and as we mentioned, we brought that up last time. That language is directly out of new legislation that came out.
Mrs. Manning?
Yeah, so we have no enforcement mechanism. Essentially, if someone decides they don't want to pay their bill, they don't have to. I mean, the
Other
General
than
Assembly
attempting to
has
send
basically
them
given
them.
free meals for everybody. Is that
We can attempt to send
accurate?
notices home and attempt to get the parents to comply or do a payment plan with us, but after that, we cannot take a legal action to do that, no.
Okay, thank you.
There are no further questions on policy 384. We'll move on to policy 757, which has to do with vehicles, motorized devices, and animals on school grounds. The significant change in this was really to add subsections to this. We've now, subsection A is vehicles and motorized devices, B is animals on school property, and then we made some changes, additions to the statutory references and legal reference sections. Those are the only changes that we are recommending at this time. Are there any questions on policy 757? Hearing no questions on 757, I will move on to 761. 761 is relations with governmental agencies, public safety agencies, and disaster agencies. One of the changes that needed to be made was a statutory change, and I will note there is a mistake in the legal reference that I will have corrected before it gets to you for consent. The statutory section 22.1280.2:3, we have an extra zero in it that needs to be corrected. The statutory language has to do with a reference to the memorandum of understanding with local law enforcement for the SRO programs. That language is coming out of the statute, so we've gone ahead and added that into this policy. That would be the only change we'll be making and recommending for policy 761. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, I'll move on to 762, relatively short policy. This is relations with governmental agencies, Department of Parks and Recreation. The only changes we are recommending this to remove out the reference to the editor's notes. Other than that, there are no further changes recommended.
Are there any questions on 762? Hearing no change on 762, I will move on to policy 763, relations with governmental agencies, voter registrar's office. The change here is that the actual name of the that used to be the general register, is now the director of elections / general register. We're correcting that. And we're also recommending that we pull out the reference to the editor's note. Other than that, there are no other changes to policy 763. Are there any questions on 763? Hearing no questions on 763, we'll move on to 765. 765 is membership in Educational Associations, Virginia High School League. There are no recommended changes to this policy. Are there any questions? No questions on that. We'll move on to policy 769, relations with non-governmental organizations, colleges, and universities. Again, after reviewing this, there are no recommended changes to this policy. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions on that, I will move on to policy 770, relations with non-governmental organizations, corporate and other private sponsorship and scholastic activities. This is a longer policy having to do with corporate sponsorships. The only recommended changes we're making here is to remove out the reference to the editor's notes that you see there, but there are no further changes that are being recommended to this particular policy. Are there any questions on policy 770? Hearing no questions, Madam Chair, that would be the end of the recommendation of the PRC from the April meeting.
All right, thank you. Well, we'll expect to see these next agenda under consent. So now, speaking of consent, we are up to the consent agenda. And I will go through and announce technology and career education. Well, first a motion to I'll entertain motions, and then I'll go through the list. Mrs. Melnick and seconded Mrs. Anderson. So the consent items are technology and career education, Carl Perkins, school year 2023 grant, a resolution for Teacher Appreciation Week, which we will read, religious exemptions, and another resolution to be read regarding the sale of property of a portion of Kellam High School property to the city of Virginia Beach. And I do have a comment. I was asked to draw your attention with respect to that to the amended. Somebody help me out here.
The resolution that we put a new copy of the resolution. The amount on there was inaccurate. It's about 3,000. It should be 1,600. It is a small slice of property off West Neck Road. That amount is the wrong amount. When you approved this in the fall to do the sale, you did approve for the 1,600. There was just a typographical error in your resolution, so it should read 1,600. And that'll be corrected in the package, but that is the resolution that's before you right now.
Yes, you all have a hard copy of that. Okay. All right, so let's go back to Teacher Appreciation Week. Mrs. Felton.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution Teacher Appreciation Week, May 2nd through the 6th, 2022. Whereas research shows that classroom teachers have a significant impact on students' achievement and success. And whereas teachers' efforts in planning, teaching, and assessing directly impact students' growth, and whereas teachers work in collaboration with school administrators to engage families and the community to create challenging, authentic learning opportunities for children, and whereas the school board appreciates the hard work and time teachers dedicate to support students' achievement both inside and outside of the classroom. And whereas this dedication, contribution to a strong, positive school culture, and whereas the school division has partnered with our parents and community members to express our appreciation for teachers through the hashtag LoveVBTeachers campaign, and whereas the school division uses this campaign to highlight the works of our extraordinary instructional staff throughout the entire school year, but especially during Teachers Appreciation Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach officially recognize May 2nd through the 6th, 2022, as Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach encourages all community members support and participate in activities designed to recognize teachers for their tireless work as educational leaders. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across official minutes of this board, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be distributed to each school in the division to be posted in a prominent location. This will be adopted by the school board of the city of Virginia Beach this 26th day of April 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. And there isn't a year where this just resonates more than any other past Teacher Appreciation Week. So, and now Mrs. Melnick with our final resolution of the evening. Of this
Resolution
section.
regarding the sale of property of a portion of Kellam High School property to the City of Virginia Beach. Whereas the City of Virginia Beach, the city, has identified the need to purchase certain school board real property, to wit, 748 square feet, located on the Kellam High School site and identified as a portion of parcel G-PIN 1493-79-0082, the school board property, for right-of-way purposes as part of the city's West Neck Rose Phase 4 Project CIP 100483, formerly CIP 2-088, the project. Whereas the project will provide for the design and construction of paved shoulders for cyclists, pedestrian accommodations, and drainage walls along West Neck Road. Whereas the city has proposed purchasing the school board property for fair market value, which will enable the city to complete the project. Whereas Virginia Code Section 22.1-129B allows the school board to convey real property that it determines is surplus of its needs. Whereas due to the negligible impact the conveyance of the school board property will have on Kellam High School site and the expected benefits to be derived for the citizens of the city of Virginia Beach, the school board is of the opinion that conveyance of the school board property for such right-of-way purposes is a benefit to both parties. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board finds that conveying the school board property to the city of Virginia Beach for right-of-way purposes is a benefit to the citizens, and that the sale of the area for right-of-way purposes will not adversely impact the residue of the Kellam High School site. Further, in accordance with Virginia Code Section 22.1-129B, the school board does not have further use of the area to be sold. The school board agrees to accept the fair market value of $1,600 as payment in full for the 748 square feet to be conveyed to the city. The school board authorizes the chair or her designee to execute any and all documents desired and necessary to complete the above referenced transaction and to take all actions necessary to have these funds retained by the school board, adopted by the school board this 26th day of April 2022. And for your signature.
Thank you. Okay, so we already have our motion and second. So all in favor of the consent agenda, please show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. Now on to action. Personnel report, administrative appointments. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Mrs. Melnick, and a second. Mrs. Anderson. Any discussion? All in favor, please show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. And now, Dr. Spence, you have some introductions planned for us.
I do, yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's nice to be able to do this in person with guests again. So we're going to start by asking Jennifer Corso to please stand up. Ms. Corso has served as a teacher in Chesapeake Public Schools, in Bedford County, and Botetourt County, and also has been a teacher at Allenton Elementary School and Woodstock Elementary School. Most recently, she's been serving as administrative assistant between Lynn Haven and Rosemont Elementary Schools. We're pleased, you need to stay standing. We're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next assistant principal at Rosemont Elementary School. Congratulations. And I understand you have some guests, if you would mind introducing them.
Well, yes, I have Miss Carrie Hall, principal at Rosemont. I'm excited she's here with me. And I have my son Zeke and my daughter Summer and my wonderful husband.
Thank you so much and congratulations. And then could I have Tara Kurtz please stand up? What? I thought she was here. She's not here. Oh, she's watching virtually. Oh, you know what? I'm looking at that. Thank you. My bad. I apologize. Well, Ms. Kirsch is watching us virtually. She has served as a teacher at Lincoln Park Elementary School. She's also taught in Norfolk Public Schools. She was a teacher at Rosemont Forest Elementary School. Most recently has been serving as an administrative assistant at Princess Anne Elementary School. And we're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next assistant principal at Pembroke Meadows Elementary School. Congratulations to her. And then finally, I think she is here. If I could ask Taylor Loudermilk to please stand up. And Miss Loudermilk has been a teacher at Green Run Elementary School and Bayside Elementary School, most recently been serving as administrative assistant at W.T. Cook Elementary School. And we're pleased this evening you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next assistant principal at Kempsville Elementary School. Congratulations. And I know you have some guests with you. Thank you so much for being here. I'd also like to ask Tennille Bowser to please stand up. Ms. Bowser has been a teacher in Washington, D.C. She's been an assistant principal in Washington, D.C. She's also been assistant principal here at Lansdowne Middle School. Most recently has been serving as the principal at Lynn Haven Middle School. And we're very pleased this evening that you have accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next principal of Green Run High School. Congratulations. I think you have some guests with you.
Virtually, but they all felt like it was hard to be here today. I'm sorry my mom left, my Aunt Lou, my cousin Charnel, my best friend Kelly, my Aunt Mary, my Aunt Green, my cousin Dr. Johnson's at Lansdowne High School, and my Aunt Eleanor Johnson.
Oh my gosh!
Also, Go Stallions. Check that out. She is also watching virtually. I want to acknowledge Lauren Cave. Dr. Cave has served as a teacher in Suffolk Public Schools. She's also been a teacher here at Princess Anne Middle School, an administrative assistant and assistant principal at Bayside Middle School. Most recently has been serving as assistant principal at Corporate Landing Middle School. And we're pleased this evening you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as a human resources specialist in the Department of Human Resources. Congratulations to her. And then finally, I'd like to recognize, he was appointed at our last meeting but was not able to be here, and he wanted to be here tonight. And so we'd like to ask Robert Jameson to please stand up. You guys probably don't know him, but he began his career in Virginia Beach as an algebra readiness tutor at Cox High School and an SOL tutor at Cox High School. He became a school counselor there and eventually school counseling department chair, and then served as an instructional specialist in the Office of Guidance Services and Student Records. Most recently has been serving as the coordinator of guidance in the Office of Student Support Services. And we are pleased that you have accepted our recommendation for him to serve as the next Executive Director of Student Support Services in the Office of Student Support Services. Congratulations, Mr. Jameson. And I know you have guests with you as well.
Isabel and Evelyn, I have less.
Can they stand?
She and I with Isabel and Evelyn.
Robert, we can't see them. Could they stand up? You know, just,
Thank you.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She's not cute at all.
I have a future Chief Justice and a future Beyonce.
Nice.
My wife Stephanie, and a happy Mother's Day as to why I'm here tonight. This was for her. My
Oh.
mom, Patricia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That does conclude our appointments for the evening.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. The division continues to remain in good hands with you folks. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and we wish you all the best.
I'm so glad they stuck it out.
Give it another 30 seconds. That was very uplifting. Okay, we're going to proceed maybe with a closed door. One closed door. Okay, we welcome Ms. Pate here for action item B, budget transfers. So I'll first call for a motion to open up this up for discussion. Motion to approve, Ms. Owens, and a second, Mrs. Hughes. Okay, welcome, Ms. Pate.
Thank you, Chairwoman Rye. Oh. I'll speak loud. Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, School Board members, Dr. Spence. In the packet is the listing of budget transfers that are been identified as needing school board approval. These budget transfers are a result of the Department of Budget and Finance's mid-year spending analysis. Budget staff actually connects with various cost centers and departments to look at their spending plans for the remainder of the year and tries to identify any additional funds that may be in an area that can be moved or transferred into another area where there's some activities that could be used and expended before the end of the year. There's a list of them. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have regarding those transfers.
Okay. I just want to let my colleagues know we don't have a hard copy of this. This was in the
I'm so
packet.
sorry.
Okay. So, but if anybody does, just if that generates any additional questions. Okay, hearing none then, all in favor, show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. And now, continuing with Ms. Pate, we have action item C, resolution regarding additional grant funding for fiscal year 21-22. Motion to approve before we open this up. Mrs. Riggs, and a second, Mrs. Holtz. All right, again, Mrs. Pate, floor is yours.
So this is the resolution that was brought before the board on April 5th, prior to spring break. We had to do a revision to this resolution for this fiscal year. We did receive notification from the Virginia Department of Education on 4/15, which is the Friday of spring break, that we received an award that was applied for by our Human Resources Department back in August of 2021. This was an unexpected award that we did receive notification of late, and so we were able to amend this resolution in order to capture that award because our contingency fund has been pretty exhausted due to all of the American Rescue Plan federal awards as well as the state initiative, early reading initiative grant. So we're able to add that additional amount. There are some requirements to that award that there's some verification of some data that needs to be completed and submitted by this Friday by the Human Resources Department. This award does provide for incentives of $2,500 or $5,000 to an employee that was hired between August 15th of 2021 and November 30th of 2021. HR should be in the process of identifying those. They also have to be a full-time employee of the system. They have to receive a good performance evaluation for this fiscal year and also have a commitment that they will work with us in fiscal year 2023. So that is the revision that you see to this resolution that you did see back in information on April 5th.
Okay, before we entertain questions, I'm going to ask Mrs. Melnick to read the resolution.
Whereas the City of Virginia Beach's adopted budget ordinance for the current fiscal year appropriated funds to the school board of the City of Virginia Beach And whereas the schools have budgeted an amount of $204,198,866 in the current fiscal year 21-22 in the Categorical Grants Fund. And whereas this budgeted amount in the Categorical Grants Fund is $20,907,617 short of the amount needed to fund 5 new American Rescue Plan ARP awards as proposed amendment to the Early Reading Initiative state grant as outlined in House Bill 29 and Senate Bill 29, and the new ESSER 3 Recruitment Incentive for Public Education grant as recently outlined in Superintendent's Memo 083-22. And whereas examples of the proposed spending plan for the Early Reading Initiative state grant includes tutoring and related instructional support in the classroom, and whereas examples of the proposed spending plan for the ESSER 3 Recruitment Incentive for Public Education grant includes one-time bonuses for regular and hard-to-staff teaching positions, and whereas examples of the proposed spending plans for the 5 ARP awards, ARP Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, ARP Unfinished Learning, ARP Before and After School Programs, ARP Summer Learning, and ARP Homeless Children and Youth include HVAC replacement and renovations, stipends for reading and math teachers, instructional materials and supplies, additional instructional staffing before and after school, web-based STEM activities, transportation, summer school staffing, social emotional support through CHKD's Bridge program, and case management and school supplies for homeless children and youth, respectively. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach requests an additional appropriation of $20,907,617 into the Categorical Grants Fund, and whereas appropriations of funds must be approved by the City Council prior to the expenditure of funds by the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, and now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach approves and affirms the necessary appropriation and recommended uses of these funds, and be it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach requests an additional appropriation of $20,907,617 into the Categorical Grants Fund. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this school board, and the clerk of the school board is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the mayor, each member of the city council, the city manager, and the city clerk. Adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this 26th day of April, 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Melnick. Questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. And now Ms. Pate is sticking with us for action item D, the fiscal year 22-23 budget amended resolution. And we'll get a motion to approve in a second, and then we'll read the resolution, and then we'll proceed with discussion. Okay. So a motion to approve, Mrs. Riggs, and a second, Ms. Owens. Ms. Melnick, would you read the resolution,
I get all the
please?
fun budget resolutions. Whereas the mission of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, VBCPS, in partnership with the entire community, is to empower every student to become a lifelong learner who is a responsible, productive, and engaged citizen within the global community. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach approved the fiscal year 22-23 school board proposed operating budget on March 8th, 2022. And whereas the current amount budgeted in the Categorical Grants Fund is $166,137,948. And whereas this budgeted amount is $14,432,365 short of the carryover amount needed to fund the American Rescue Plan, ARP, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, CSLFRF grant, and additional Title I FY 22-23 state appropriations. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Categorical Grants Fund be increased by $14,432,365, and be it further resolved that the additional funds be used for HVAC replacement and renovations, and to raise the achievement of the lowest achieving students. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this school board, and the clerk of the school board is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the mayor, each member of city council, the city manager, and the city clerk. Adopted by the school board of the city of Virginia Beach this 26th day of April 2022.
So Ms. Pate, you have some comments for us first?
I will
Thank you.
comment on that. So this particular is amending our current budget that's not been adopted yet. It does relate to the Category Grants Fund. It also relates mainly to the 5 grants from the American Rescue Plan that were, you just looked at for fiscal year 22 on the previous resolution. These are estimated carryover amounts. These grants will run through 23 and 24. There's also an estimated amount for our Title I grant that we received some information in the last couple of weeks that indicated that that grant will probably, when it's budgeted for in the CEON, it comes in at level funding because we really don't know what that Title I funding looks like. We have received that information that it looks like that grant will come in at about $4.7 million higher than level funding for fiscal year 22. So that's also included in this additional amount that's being requested as an amended budget resolution. We did offset that carryover and that additional Title I money with some savings from what was budgeted into the CEON. When we did some more analysis, since we've spent more of those, we can actually get better data. So we have offset some of that plus with some savings from there, and also with about $450,000 of our current contingency money, which has been budgeted in the CEON. So that's what you see as these additional amounts related to the amended budget that needs to go forward.
Questions, colleagues? Beginning with Mrs. Manning.
I'm sorry, you said there's an additional $4 million that were being awarded. What was that for?
That's for Title I.
Oh, okay.
Title I.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, then, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final action item of the evening, and we're welcoming Ms. Ingram back, the disposition of school board-owned property, the Laskin Road Annex. So we'll begin with motions and then again another resolution to be read. And then we'll be asking you, Ms. Ingram, for a quick recap of what this is and entertain any final questions. All right, so motion to approve, Mrs. Felton, and a second, Mrs. Anderson. Okay, Mrs. Melnick, please proceed to read the resolution.
Whereas the school board of the city of Virginia Beach, the school board, is the owner of a parcel of land consisting of approximately 12.41 acres located at 1413 Laskin Road and identified as parcel GPIN 2417-18-3772, which in recent years was used as the Laskin Road Annex and is more particularly described on Exhibit A attached hereto and made a part of this resolution, the school board property. Whereas a request for proposals was issued on June 20th, 2021, and after a committee made up of representatives from the city of Virginia Beach and Virginia Beach City Public Schools evaluated all the proposals and conducted interviews among the top 4 proposals, Franklin Johnston Group Management and Development, LLC, Franklin Johnston, was selected as the preferred respondent. Whereas Franklin Johnston's proposal includes purchasing the school board property to construct a mixed-use development, including apartments, approximately 50,000 square feet of office, approximately 6,000 square feet of retail, and a 5,000 plus or minus square foot restaurant, structured parking and related amenities, and surface parking, the project. Whereas Virginia Code Section 22.1-129 allows the school board to sell real property that it determines it has no further use for, and the school board has held a public hearing on April 5th, 2022, to take public comment on the proposed sale of the school board project to Franklin Johnston or its related development company, TFJG Canopy LLC, and retention of the proceeds therefrom. And whereas due to the determination that the school board property is no longer needed for educational purposes, and the expected benefits that will be derived from the project for the citizens of Virginia Beach, the school board is of the opinion that sale of the school board property to Franklin Johnston would be in the public interest and a benefit to all parties. Now therefore be it resolved that one, in accordance with Virginia Code Section 22.1-129, the school board finds that it does not have further use for the school board property located at 1413 Laskin Road, GPIN 2417-18-3772, as more particularly described on Exhibit A, and it determines that it should be declared surplus and may be sold so long as the City Council allows the school board to retain the proceeds from the sale. 2. The school board property is authorized to be sold to Franklin Johnston or its related development company, TFJG Canopy LLC, and the total amount of compensation to be paid for the school board property for this transaction is $7 million. 3. Should the City Council of Virginia Beach authorize the school board to retain the proceeds from this sale, the funds shall be allocated towards the school board's capital improvement program. 4. Additionally, the school board authorizes the chair or her designee to execute any and all documents necessary to complete the above referenced transaction, so long as they are substantially consistent with the terms set forth above and have been deemed by the attorney for the school board to be legally sufficient. Adopted by the school board this 26th day of April, 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Melnick. Ms. Stinghope, do you have any prepared remarks, or else we'll go straight to questions?
You can go straight to questions again. I just wanted to remind you, we came to March 22nd for information, and we had a public hearing April 5th for this 12.41 acres at 1413 Laskin Road.
All right, colleagues? Mrs. Manning.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions on the purchase agreement. I see that we have a $100,000 escrow deposit, but what is the consideration of the sum of $10? What does that mean?
I have our Deputy City Attorney here, Becky Kubin, who can answer that question for us.
It kind of caught my attention.
So that is just a traditional way to recite that there is consideration for the agreement. So a lot of times in a contract, it's just shortened to, it used to just be $1, now it's $10.
Okay.
It's really just a formality.
I wish I could get by with that in residential sales. And then one other question, the right of entry demolition of existing improvements. So we're allowing demolition prior to the closing of the agreement. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so the purchaser would like to get started on their project just as soon as possible. And so in order to do that, there would be the need to get the building cleared. The transaction will not close probably until about a year from now. And so there's a lot of time that's going to take place. So they're going to pursue a rezoning of the property. And if that is successful, then the right of entry would allow them on the property to then demolish the structure prior to, so that they would start with a clean site when they take.
So what contingencies are we still going to have pending when they're demolishing the property? I mean, it's not their property yet, and I see that we have, liability, language in here, so we're not liable for, things happening on the property. But what are the chances this could fall through and they demolish the property? And which I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, but
So, in the real estate world, when you have a building on the site that is not the highest and best use for that site, it's
Yeah.
actually better to have a clean site.
Yeah.
We would want the rezoning to have been completely completed before that, and we would not allow it prior to that time. But after that, I think it's probably an asset to have it removed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mrs. Hughes.
Yeah, I have just one thing, and this is probably for you as well.
Stand up.
Just stand up. Well, it's just, so at the end of the resolution, we use the phrase substantially consistent instead of consistent. Are we expecting changes?
No, it's just sometimes, some small thing may have to be adjusted, might be a couple of days here and there on one of the deadlines, or may have been, rather than have to go through a whole revision of this and have you make a decision on something that's relatively consistent with this. We just do that to allow some flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right then, all in favor, show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
I have to.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
we had 9 ayes.
Yes.
And, okay, abstentions?
Yes. Because I'm part of the Royal Order of the Neptune Festival, and King Neptune this year is Taylor Johnson, I will be abstaining from this vote.
And Madam Chair, we have 1 abstention, so the motion did pass with 9 ayes, no nays, and 1 abstention.
Thank you all.
And for the record, anything up to this, I just met, King Neptune is a surprise every year, so we did not know that he was king, and I just found out last month, and so, again, my abstention.
All right, who would like to start us off with committee or liaison reports?
And I'm sorry, it's Mr. Franklin. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say, it's Taylor Franklin, sorry.
Mrs. Riggs?
I wanted to announce our Sister Cities Youth Ambassador for the year 22-23, and her name is Lucia Morton. She is a student at the Academy of Business and Entrepreneurship at Kempsville High School, and I would like to introduce her at one of our future board meetings, if that be possible. Thank you to all of our school board members that came, and it was a great venue. We had our first art show with many participants and winners, so it turned out to be very nice being at the Zyder. So anyway, I would like to introduce her in the future at one of our board meetings.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Felton?
Thank you, Chair Ryan. I just like to make mention, and this is not one of my committee, but I did attend my first graduation for 2022, and it was Virginia Beach Public School practical nurses. It was awesome. We had 10, and they were just glowing with expectations and future things. It was really, really good. And I just like to tell my colleagues that you would have been proud of them as well. I'd like to bring to your attention that on last evening at 5 o'clock, we did have our VSBA Tidewater Spring Forum. And it started at 5. It was really, really good, packed with a lot of information. We also had a jazz band there as well. And I just like to say that the middle school winner, we did have a first place winner, Sophie Katinaman from middle school, from Virginia Beach Middle School. She had first place. I also like to say that our panel was full with our delegates, but due to the fact that they were in special session, all the ones that I reached out to, especially Delegate Tatum, Delegate Tim Anderson, Delegate Barry Knight, and I could go and name the list, they all returned my email to let me know that they would not be able to attend. But I just like to say that Delegate Glenn Davis from the 84th, he did attend in his car in a rest area. He was determined to get there to be with us because he is the chief of education, and he came in with a plethora of information on the agenda when it came to education. He said he's really pushing that we get those funds to elevate our teachers' raise and counselors and mental health. He named a plethora of things, but he really was excited to attend our forum, which he has. In all the years that I've been there, Delegate Glenn Davis has been there to show up and to participate. Also, Delegate Salmons from District 94, she showed up as well, and they were both there giving us their insight on what they expected from the budget this year for education. Delegate Cliff Jenkins also attended, but while he was on call, the chairman of the House called him. He had to get off the phone and go attend to that call. But it was a very impactful venue on yesterday, and I just like to say that those delegates that are in our area always try to participate But this year, because of the special assembly, they could not. But I reached out to every last one of them, and they all responded very gracefully, and I do appreciate them being there to show up. So it's about schools. They left all the other stuff outside the door and came in as the school, talking about the schools and the students. Also, we had a great impactful information from J.T. Kessler, who is the lobbyist who goes to the Hill and talk with the senators and the delegates concerning our agenda. He was there as well. I would recommend you to go to the official site of the VSBA and pull up this forum and look at it in its entirety. Go to the original site and get the original information concerning what was being said. It's not edited, it's not distorted. It is the official video. Also, just to let you know, hearing in our executive meeting in December, Secretary Gadira of Education and her deputy showed up at our executive meeting for the VSBA, and they expressed their concerns about education and where we were going with it as well. So I want you to know that our VSBA is attended by all members when they can, and when they cannot, whoever reach out to them, they let you know that they can't be there. If they don't let you know, their aides will call you. So I just like to say we had a great response, but due to the special session, they could not show up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? Mrs. Weems.
Just to announce that the monthly SEAC meeting will be May 9th. That's Monday morning at 9:30 at Williams Farm Rec Center. Thank you.
Okay, on this side, anybody? Right, and our governance committee meeting is next week, and following that meeting, we'll have an update for you on these, the formation of the in-house legal department. So, that concludes our formal meeting, and we are now going to read into closed, which take your time. I did. Just without the gavel.
Chair Ride, Vice Chair Ride, you need a copy?
I move that the school board recess into closed session to deliberate on the following matters. 1, a closed meeting pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by Section 2.2-3711, Part A, Paragraphs 7 and 8, as amended. 7, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. For the purpose of this subdivision, probable litigation means litigation that has been specifically threatened or on which the public body or its legal counsel has a reasonable bias to believe will be commenced by or against a known party. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is consulted on a matter. And A8, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is consulted on a matter, namely to discuss settlement conference related to pending federal court cases. I made the motion.
Okay, second is Mrs. Anderson. All right, so all in favor, show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion was approved to go into closed session.
All right, we'll need a few moments to transition.
State pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered. I need a motion?
Okay, seconded by Mrs. Anderson.
Manning?
Okay, all in favor? Raised hand.
Okay, we have 10 ayes, so the motion did pass. Oh, we have 9 ayes and 1 abstention from Ms. Owen, so the motion did
Just
pass.
to go in or out, it wasn't about what we talked about.
Wait, so how did we settle that? Where did Cammie go? She knows the answer to that. How are we reflecting this?
We're doing 9 ayes and 1 abstention because she was not here for the whole closed session.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Well, it's really a camp.